Managing your law practice can be challenging. Marketing, time management, attracting clients, and all the things besides the cases that you need to do that aren't billable. Welcome to this edition of the Unbillable Hour, the Law Practice Advisory Podcast. This is where you'll get the information you need from expert guests and host Christopher Anderson, here on Legal Talk Network.
Welcome to the Unbillable Hour, the Law Practice Advisory Podcast, helping attorneys achieve more success. We're glad you can listen today on Legal Talk Network. And today's episode, we always vary the episodes between marketing and sales and people and production and money. And today's about physical plant. To be specific about technology, and to be even more specific because of the time that we're in and when this is going to be on air, technology that can assist you in operating your virtual team during this era of lockdowns, and quite honestly, probably what's going to be a fundamental change in the number of people that are working with law firms that do continue after this is over to operate remotely. So that, and also we'll talk a little bit about maintaining compliance with privacy while you're doing that, and some best practices on going remote. So the title of the show today is Protecting Privacy and Other Concerns of the Remote Workforce, because my guest today is Kimball Parker. Now, Kimball is the founder and CEO of SixFifty, which is the technology subsidiary of the law firm Wilson Sonsini. Kimball also is the director of LawX, the legal design lab at BYU Law School. Last year at LawX, Kimball and his students developed and publicly released a software called SoloSuit, which is an automated tool to help people answer debt collections. And they're also now developing this year an automated tool to help people avoid being evicted called Hello Landlord. Love it. And next year, LawX will develop another automated product to help people filing for asylum. So developing lots of products for people to help self-help in these areas. In 2016, Kimball was named was given the Fast Case 50 Award, honoring the law's smartest, most courageous innovators, techies, visionaries, and leaders. And Kimball was also honored as a 2019 Legal Rebel by the American Bar Association. Kimball has just gotten one of the best introductions that I've given on the show because, well, he wrote it. I am, of course, your host, Christopher Anderson, and I am an attorney with a singular passion for helping other lawyers achieve success with their law firm businesses. In the Unbillable Hour each month, we explore an area important to help you be a more profitable lawyer through growing your revenues, getting back more of your time, and or getting more professional satisfaction from your business. We are dedicated to bringing you guests each month on the Unbillable Hour to help you learn more about how to make your law business work for you instead of the other way around. And before we get started, I do want to say a thank you to our sponsors, Nexa, Solo Practice University, Scorpion, and Law Clerk. Nexa, formerly known as Answer One, is a leading virtual receptionist and answering service provider for law firms. Learn more by giving them a call at 800-267-9371 or online at www.nexa.com. Solo Practice University is a great resource for solos no matter how long you've been practicing. Make sure you check out solopracticeuniversity.com and learn how to run your practice better. Scorpion crushes the standard for law firm online marketing with proven campaign strategies to get attorneys better cases from the internet. Partner with Scorpion to get an award-winning website and ROI-positive marketing programs today. Visit scorpionlegal.com/podcast. Law Clerk, where attorneys go to hire freelance lawyers. Visit lawclerk.legal to learn how to increase your productivity and your profits by working with talented freelance lawyers. And again, today's episode of the Unbillable Hour is Protecting Privacy and Other Concerns of the Remote Workforce. And my guest is Kimball Parker. Kimball is the founder and CEO of SixFifty, the technology subsidiary of the law firm Wilson Sonsini. And Kimball, welcome to the Unbillable Hour.
Hey, thank you for having me.
It's absolutely my pleasure. Now, I usually say at this point that I gave a terrible introduction, but I think the introduction, since you wrote it, was actually pretty good. So let me just ask you, I think the kind of follow-up to that is, what about your work with SixFifty and with the law school at LawX leads you to want to present on this topic, to talk about remote work and some of the privacy challenges involved?
So when the NBA canceled its season on March 11th, that night we made a decision to transfer our workforce remote. We have about 25 people working for us at SixFifty, and that became like a very complicated process for us. You think like, okay, you just tell everybody to work from home, but no, actually there's a cocktail
Yeah.
regulations and, both state and federal that you have to take into account, a lot of practical considerations.
And I think a lot of our listeners have probably kind of just sent people home and threw a laptop at them and are still struggling with what they really should be doing. So this is going to be great.
Yeah. And it was difficult. And so, we are lucky because we're attached, to one of the best law firms in the world, Wilson Sonsini. So we consulted with a top 10 employment expert in the nation. Her name's Marina Satalis. And she, kind of helped us walk through and gave us some policies that could help us navigate, moving our workforce remote and some of the other issues that this COVID-19 situation raises, like sick leave,
Yeah.
and let's say travel or how do you reimburse people, if they want to buy things to help them work from home. And anyway, so we went through it. And really, the experience made us think like, geez, how does any company do this, or any law firm do this, or really just any business? How are they doing this without a Marina Satalis? And so that got us thinking about this issue kind of more on a more broad level, not just about us and trying to survive, but because the reason why we formed SixFifty is that Wilson Sonsini is one of the best law firms in the world.
Just tell us a little bit more about it. I'm sure almost everybody knows about it, but where's Wilson Sonsini? What's their main thrust? What do they do?
So Wilson Sonsini, they're based in Palo Alto. They really grew up with the tech boom in Silicon Valley. Sure. And so they represent the biggest, most important technology companies in the world. And actually they founded most of them, helped found most of them, and brought most of them public. But, like most big law firms, like mom and pop shops don't typically use them.
Sure.
Like they don't have a lot of car dealership or flower shop clients. They have a lot of startups. They specialize in startups and technology and biotech, but not really like traditional small business.
Sure.
And so we created SixFifty to really bring that top tier expertise from their firm to those types of companies, companies that wouldn't otherwise be able to afford them.
Yeah.
So anyway, we started automating some complicated privacy laws that a lot of businesses had to deal with, like the GDPR and the CCPA.
Right.
And then this experience with COVID, made us think, geez, we could really offer a service here and, try to, maybe automate for free some of the policies and other things that companies and law firms need to do to have their company work remote.
Yeah, and some of which I got to be honest, I got to imagine anyway that it's not even that they're having trouble complying with them; they may not even know they exist.
Exactly. Yeah. So let me give you an example. Some of the laws that govern employees regularly still govern if they work from home, like OSHA. You have to ensure that that your employees have a safe working environment. The confidentiality of your information, all of that still applies. And so, if you send your workforce home and you say, oh, well, work from your own computer at home, that may present some issues actually with the confidentiality of the information.
Sure.
Anyway, there are a host of issues like that, again, I think like you're saying, many companies may not even know exist.
Yeah. Work from your own computer on your own unsecured Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
Or your neighbors, right? Some people are working, they share it with their neighbor, or they're bopping over to Starbucks and using theirs.
Exactly. And then maybe pulling up confidential client files or sensitive financial information. And so, companies and law firms, and basically just all businesses need to be aware of some of the issues that can arise when you work from home. And so we basically automated, some of the policies that a company would need to handle some of those issues, which kind of brought us into this area and has led to this discussion with you.
Cool. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about those, but I want to just get a little bit more background. You said that Wilson Sonsini created SixFifty to give this kind of world-class expertise and make it available to smaller businesses. How did you get into this? How did you end up at SixFifty? You mentioned also, or I mentioned that you're working with LawX. How did that all come about? What's your background?
So I attended the University of Chicago for law school and then worked for a big law firm, Quinn Emanuel, a big litigation law firm. Yep. And while I was there, one of my best friends is a software engineer. I don't think I fully understood how good of a software engineer he was. Mm-hmm. But, we kind of brainstormed about some ideas to basically help people who couldn't afford attorneys. And we started building those, and they started to do really well. And then that kind of caught the attention of BYU, and we started LawX at BYU. And basically, LawX, the goal of LawX is like we're going to pick one area of the law that really is difficult for people who can't afford an attorney. Right. And we're going to try to automate it for them so that they can self-service. And so we started to build tools for people who couldn't afford attorneys, and those really started to do well. We built a debt collection tool. We built a tool for people who had been sued for a debt. Right. Basically, it was like TurboTax for answering a debt collection complaint. Yeah, and that had more uses in a month than we expected in the entire year. Wow. Then we built some other tools that have really got pretty incredible usage. Like one of our tools has been used in every state in the nation. Yeah, I mentioned at the beginning that you have this eviction tool. Yeah. Hello Landlord. We built that in conjunction with the University of Arizona, and that's had incredible usage. And so that caught the attention of Wilson Sonsini, and they thought, geez, let's do that. Let's plug in our expertise into these tools and see if we can really lower the cost and make things more convenient to use our services, to see, because again, Wilson doesn't really reach down to a significant part of the market. Sure. Most people will never use Wilson Sonsini, but if they knew how good a Wilson Sonsini was, they would want to. Right. And so you're making some of their expertise accessible to those who might not otherwise engage the firm. Exactly. And so we're building products. If it's a product that costs money, it's usually 1/10 to 1/20 of the cost that it would take otherwise. Yeah, about half our products are for free. So we fund our kind of pro bono side through our for-profit side. Perfect. And at the end of the show, I'm going to ask you to give the listeners ways to check you out. So that's really cool. So let's turn our attention back now to what's going on. So you mentioned, we talked about lots of law firms have had to send people home. Some of them weren't as proactive as you were and, waited until the actual stay-at-home order or whatever each state is calling them. And in some states, law firms are exempted. In some states, they aren't. But even the ones where they are exempted, they're having trouble keeping their people at the office or keeping the distancing. So anyway, they're all sending their people home. What challenges, let's just list them right now because we're going to hear from our sponsors here in a second, but just tell me kind of as a list form, what are some of the main challenges these firms are facing? And when we come back from the break, we'll talk about them. I think some of the challenges that firms are facing are similar to the challenges we faced, and some I think are different depending on the firm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, we were lucky enough, we function all on laptops, all on kind of secure cloud systems. And so working from home was not a big technological challenge for us, but for many firms, it's going to be a big technological challenge. A lot of firms are still using desktops, don't have laptops, and so maybe people are kind of using their own computers, or they're having to scramble and get laptops for those people. Also, a lot of like document storage systems, especially if they're kind of legacy systems, don't run on the cloud. They run on premises servers. Exactly. And so they run on premises. So that is an enormous challenge. I mean, if all of your client files are in the office and you can't access them remotely, then it's very difficult to do work. So that's one bucket. There are a bunch of technical challenges there. Sure. Bucket number 2 is what we discussed before, is kind of dealing with some of the regulations that apply, like OSHA, ADA, that are implicated when you change people's workplace, basically. Yeah. And I was just thinking when you said that earlier, I was just thinking like, wow, so like the guy who goes home and puts his laptop at a bad angle and develops some repetitive motion problems, like that could be something you're actually liable for, even though it's at their home. Sure. Wow. Sure. And so, you need policies in place that employees know and acknowledge that they've received, saying that they're working in a safe environment that's not going to cause them harm. One other big challenge is what if your workers get sick? This is complicated in a number of different ways. One way is that companies during this crisis, and this is unique to a situation like this, companies really need to know who within their company has developed COVID-19 or has either symptoms or been diagnosed with COVID-19, because the company has an obligation, again, to create a safe working environment. So if somebody has COVID-19, the company needs to tell that person, do not come into work. Please do not come into close contact with any of your work colleagues. Yeah. And so, yeah, the company really has an obligation to the other employees to make sure that they are protected. And then the company also needs to know who that person who's been diagnosed or showing symptoms, who has that person been in contact with, so that then the company can notify those people.
Wow. So it even do the tracing.
Exactly. And trace it back. And again, this is part of a company's obligation to create a safe workplace. And the CDC and actually other government organizations who deal with this have basically kind of laid out, some of those obligations for employers.
Yeah, I want to take that one and talk a little bit more about it and go through some of the others, because each one is like really fascinating and important for the listeners to hear. But we do have to hear from our sponsors here for a second. So we'll take a break, hear from our sponsors, and we'll come back. We're talking with Kimball Parker, founder and CEO of SixFifty, the technology subsidiary of Wilson Sonsini. And we're talking about working remotely and some of the technical, ethical, employment, regulatory challenges with doing that. And we'll hear more about that when we come back. Ready to create and build your own solo or small firm practice? Need a nuts and bolts education on the 360-degree experience of starting a business? There's only one online destination dedicated to helping you achieve your goals: Solo Practice University. The only online educational and professional networking community dedicated to lawyers and law students who want to go into practice for themselves. More than 1,000 classes, 58 faculty and mentors. What are you waiting for? Check out solopracticeuniversity.com today. Law Clerk is where attorneys go to hire freelance lawyers. Whether you need a research memo or a complicated appellate brief, our network of freelance lawyers have every level of experience and expertise. Sign up is free, and there are no monthly fees. Only pay the flat fee price you set. Use rebate code UNBILLABLE to get a $100 Amazon gift card when you complete your next project. Learn more at lawclerk.legal. Welcome back to the Unbillable Hour. We're talking with Kimball Parker, the founder and CEO of SixFifty. And we've been talking about the challenges that small businesses, and particularly law firms, because that's you, my wonderful listeners, are facing with going and taking their workforce remote, and what some of the challenges are. And what's cool is Kimball was talking earlier about the fact that he's taken his own company remote, and so has experienced a lot of these himself. And now, as in his role as sort of bringing the expertise of his partners at Wilson Sonsini, who gave lots of great information to them, they're giving this information and putting it out there for you. And at the end of the show, we'll have a link where you can learn more. But so we were talking about several different challenges, Kimball. And you were in the middle of actually talking about the responsibility with COVID-19 and telling people as sort of under the umbrella of keeping a safe workplace. And I kind of cut you off on there. So let's start there. And then I want to go over some of the more technical stuff and the privacy stuff.
Yeah. So basically, under normal circumstances, a company really shouldn't dive into the health of their workforce.
Right.
And and it's really none of their business, and there are laws to protect against it. But during a pandemic like this, especially one that is so dangerous to such a large portion of the population, those rules are softened. And actually, government agencies pretty strongly suggest that employers really try to track the health of their employees as it relates to COVID-19 during this pandemic. And again, if you kind of think about the fundamentals of it, a lot of it makes sense. Employers have to keep, they have an obligation to keep a safe working place for their employees. And if there's somebody who has COVID-19 who's then interacting with all the other employees, that's not safe. Right. And so employers have to track that, need to try at least to track that information. And so, this again are things that we heard from our law firm.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think let's go through some of the other ones. The technical, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and quite honestly, it's 2020. Like you mentioned at the beginning, Secure Cloud made the transition a lot easier. And the challenge for a lot of law firms is that some are still working on premises servers, that their document management system is physically located in the office, and they're facing greater challenges. What are they? I mean, obviously, the time is too short for them to make the full transition to cloud-based document management systems. So what are you recommending they do right now?
It's interesting. So several law firms that I've worked at had actual physical files in file cabinets. And I think lawyers probably need to take those home and store those at home where they're going to be working. I think that's probably what I would have done when I was back practicing law with physical files. But otherwise, I think it's tough. I mean, probably they need to take a day, get everything they need from the office, download whatever they can onto laptops or hard drives that they can put onto their computer so that they can work remotely. But again, all that raises confidentiality issues as well. Those confidentiality issues are tied directly into the technology that people use while they work at home.
Yeah, and we mentioned that, right? So they may have confidential information on their laptop that they bring home, or they may have to move confidential information to their computer that they're working on from home. So what should law firms be looking at and doing to try to mitigate this issue?
Law firms, to the extent that they can do this, obviously should try to transition as much of their work onto the cloud as possible, and any kind of file sharing, there are secure FTP systems that they can use to kind of transfer files and information securely. But it's something that they need to monitor, and obviously they have a duty to their clients to do it. But I think taking as much as can be had physically, I think is probably key if it's still there.
And what do you think about like as a short term, at least a short term solution, about them moving files that might otherwise be on a file server to one of the public services or publicly available services like Box.com or Dropbox or SharePoint or one of these?
Well, I think one thing that I think will be really interesting out of this is that the law has been actually pretty hostile towards working with a bunch of cloud tools and kind of collaboration tools.
Yeah.
And so, we don't have this problem at SixFifty because we're not a law firm. We're a technology company.
Right.
That's the subsidiary of a law firm. So we're not dealing with all of those same obligations. And so we can use, for example, the Google's like Google Drive,
right, and
use Google Docs. And so anyway, I have wondered whether this situation is going to help soften, some of the regulatory hurdles to using those services. Because like something like Google Drive or Box or Dropbox, those, SharePoint, those services are just essential right now. Legal work in a lot of law firms in a lot of instances just cannot be done without those types of file sharing services. And so, I think it's like not completely clear from what I understand from the law whether those are allowed. I know that there have been some opinions questioning whether people can use Google Drive or some of those services, but now in this time, I don't really see another choice.
But what I think what you're definitely saying is that regardless of where the law is right now, because it may be different in each state and whatever, and we're certainly on the show we're not stating an opinion on what the law actually is, but what I think you're seeing is that the uncertainty around it has reduced law firms' reliance on these tools that would be very helpful in a time like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's driven law firms away from those tools, which now I think is really coming back to bite the profession in a time where they have to work remotely. I mean, in a lot of states, you mentioned it's by order. And so there aren't a lot of choices there. And if the rules eliminate, 5 of the 7 best ones, it's difficult to fish out which ones work and which ones don't under the rules. And anyway, I think there needs to be more flexibility there.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to hear from our sponsors one more time. And when we come back, we're talking with Kimball Parker of SixFifty, and we've been talking about law firms moving remote in response to the COVID-19 epidemic and the work from home or the stay home orders that are coming down. And what I want to do is transition a little bit as we come back, and we're going to talk to Kimball about, again, some more tips about what people should be doing in the short term, but also how this might be a wake-up call and what law firms, law firm owners should be thinking about to be better prepared to work remotely in the future. So with that, we'll hear from our sponsors and come back and talk a little bit more with Kimball Parker. If you're missing calls, appointments, and potential clients, it's time to work with Nexa Professional. More than just an answering service, Nexa's virtual receptionists are available 24/7 to schedule appointments, qualify leads, respond to emails, integrate with your firm's software, and much more. Nexa ensures your clients have the experience they deserve. Give them a call at 800-267-9371 or visit them at nexa.com/podcast for a special offer. Feel like your marketing efforts aren't getting you the high-value cases your firm deserves? For over 15 years, Scorpion has helped thousands of law firms just like yours attract new cases and grow their practices. As a Google Premier Partner and winner of Google's Platform Innovator Award, Scorpion has the right resources and technology to aggressively market your law firm and generate better cases from the internet. For more information, visit scorpionlegal.com/podcast today. And we're back with the Unbillable Hour and Kimball Parker, founder and CEO of SixFifty, technology subsidiary of the law firm Wilson Sonsini. And we're talking about the need, the kind of quick and sudden need. I mean, I think Kimball said that they heard about the NBA shutdown on March 13th, was it? And then you basically made the decision right away to go remote. A lot of law firms are facing decisions about that quickly. So what I wanted to do on this at this point in time is talk a little bit, Kimball, if you would, about just some best practices based on what you experienced, based on what some of your clients have experienced, that law firms should be doing now, and then also about what they really should be thinking about to be better prepared to work remotely in the future.
Yeah, so this coronavirus pandemic really has shuffled the legal market, I think, already.
Yeah.
And has the potential to really reshuffle it in the future for a long time. And I think basically the winners that are going to come out of this are the firms that are the most nimble and that can react in the most helpful way for their clients. I think in a lot of ways, small firms are at a huge advantage here because a big institutional firm, it's typically very difficult to kind of change direction on a dime.
Sure.
Right. And, Wilson Sonsini exempted, actually, I think that this is one of the values kind of we bring to the firm is that, we're able to pivot and release kind of meaningful products pretty quickly. But companies right now are really scrambling to deal with COVID-19. And I think to the extent that a law firm can get up to speed with what companies need and to service those needs in a way that's helpful, obviously, to the company, I think puts them way ahead.
Sure.
And again, I think, a small firm can pivot like that in a way that a big firm may have a hard time doing. So, I think aside from all the issues we talked about kind of having the technology in place, making sure that you're not tripping over other regulatory issues, I think this really is a big opportunity for those who can seize it in helping clients, getting on their good side, which eventually when this thing flattens out and we recover from it, I think it will pay huge dividends.
Yeah, absolutely. Those who can continue to serve their clients will be remembered by their clients for it. So what would you describe as any must-have resources that you could recommend to assist with this going remote? I think, we talked about some of the online file storage. I said Dropbox and Box, and you also mentioned Google Drive, which is great. And I think I also said SharePoint. But what are some other resources they should be thinking about?
So, legal file system that I like is NetDocs.
Mm-hmm.
So as I've kind of moved to different firms and worked for different institutions, I think that to me is kind of the best software for law that's secure, that can kind of manage documents, drafts, everything like that a law firm needs.
And it's cloud-based.
And it's cloud-based. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's one of the huge advantages of it. We use Google Drive for people in jurisdictions where that is not an issue. I mean, Google Drive is incredible, and it's incredible for drafting documents too. I mean, the collaboration tools in their Google Documents tool is really like the best on the market.
Wow.
And it's a shame that lawyers have been reluctant to use it. But basically, every startup, every other business like that uses Google Drive and Google Docs extensively, including Google. Sure. And so to the extent that it's not some kind of issue with your local jurisdiction, that's an incredible option. And probably if you use it, you won't ever go back.
Yeah, so that's another great resource. What about, obviously everybody's using some sort of video conferencing, Uber Conference, Zoom, GoToMeeting, and others. And there have risen in the past week or two some concerns about privacy of these services. I just wanted to ask you to talk more generally about privacy issues that law firms should be concerned with in this more virtual world? Is Zoom safe? Are products like that safe? What should they, and what other concerns should they have?
Yeah, so we use Zoom. The Wilson Sonsini uses WebEx. I think both of those are great options. I think the privacy issues are, as far as I understand them, are more on the margins. Yeah, I don't think that it's the type of privacy issues that small firms should really worry about. It's more sharing usage like with some social media platforms,
right? Not
like somebody can hack in and listen to your client conversations, right? So I both of those are great options. Google Hangouts, we actually use Google Hangouts a lot. Google Hangouts is free. Zoom actually is free, but you can't have meetings over 45 minutes. And so that creates a little limit there. Google Hangouts is free, and you can use it as extensively as you want. I don't think that the video quality is quite as good on Google Hangouts as Zoom. There are a lot of good, secure enough at least, video conference options there for law firms that make collaborating so much easier remote.
Perfect. So I know that you and your company SixFifty have a COVID-19 online resource that you recently released to help businesses, including law firms, navigate these COVID-19 related workplace issues. You have some policies and procedures that include a telecommuting policy. Is this something that law firms could use for themselves and their clients?
Absolutely. So, we've had hundreds of companies use our service right now so far for free. And a significant portion of those are law firms. Now, part of the terms of service are that you can't take those policies, turn them around, and sell them. These policies are meant to be free for all businesses, including law firms. And so,
yes, so you can refer them.
Exactly. And really use them for your own purposes, right?
Sure.
In that, to help you think through as a law firm, how do we transition our workforce remote? How do we deal with extended sick leave? How do we deal with reimbursements and travel? And then we also developed a kind of a ticketing or questionnaire system that can collect information from employees who have been affected by COVID-19. Some of that information, it's easy to deploy. We actually have customer service reps ready to help people use it and set it up. And again, that's free. And we're not looking for an angle here. It's not free for
I gotcha.
2 months and then you have to pay.
I wouldn't let you talk about it this much if it weren't.
Yeah.
So that's great. So where can people go to find out more about this?
So they can go to SixFifty.com/COVID.
650. So that's SixFifty.com.
That's right. Spelled out. So yeah. www.SixFifty.com/COVID for information on those tools.
And if people wanted to contact you to learn more about you or what you do, what's a great way for people to reach out to you if they want to know some more?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. My email is Kimball, KIMBALL, @SixFifty.com. And yeah, we would love to hear feedback or any suggestions or product ideas to help with this COVID situation.
Thank you very much, Kimball. And this, of course, wraps up this edition of the Unbillable Hour, the Law Business Advisory Podcast. Our guest, one more time, has been Kimball Parker. Kimball is the founder and CEO of SixFifty, the technology subsidiary of the law firm William Sonsini, and he's also the director of LawX, the legal design lab at the BYU Law School. He's given you his contact information, and I hope you reach out to him and take advantage of the resources that he's providing free to the legal community and other businesses as well. Of course, I am Christopher Anderson, and I look forward to seeing you next month with another great guest as we learn more about topics that help us build the law firm business that works for you. Remember, you can subscribe to all the editions of this podcast at LegalTalkNetwork.com or on iTunes. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer. Thanks for listening to the Unbillable Hour, the Law Practice Advisory Podcast. Join us again for the next edition, right here with Legal Talk Network.